Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we are taking a look at the Avenger Templar build that I have here, and this is an adjusted build. So I have several versions of the Avenger that I play, but this one is primarily made for group play. It is made for either tanking if you want, but if you do that you have to make some adjustments, and also damage dealing, and also really good at solo play. It's just a really good build all around, and it can be pretty much used any way you want it to. And it's up to you to decide on how you choose to play it. But let's go ahead and take a look at the build. As you can see, Wood Elf Templar is what I chose for this. Now, any race will work for this. Wood Elf just happens to be the race that I actually play on live with the build, so I figured I'd use it here as well. So here we go. Max magic is 17k, 22k max health, 32k max stamina. We do have 64 points into stamina to give us that higher stamina pool. We do have a 951 mag recovery, and that's just within range of almost being perfect for what we need. And then 825 stamina recovery. We do have 2701 weapon damage with a 47% weapon critical. We also have a 20k spell resist with a 20k physical resist. We are using the Thief Mundus Stone for the higher crit chance, and we do get Major Savagery at all times because we have Expert Hunter on both bars. We also are using Tristat Food. Moving on to our equipment and gear, starting with potions and stuff. Tripods is what I use most of the time because I have other buffs that you would get normally from the stamina power pots. Stamina power pots is what I use when I'm playing in groups and dungeons and stuff, and that's because I want to make more room on my toolbar for other abilities. So I will drop other abilities to swap in and out for this. Now, the way I'm showing this build is in its solo play format, so that's pretty much what you're going to see here is how I use it solo. Now, going over our sets and stuff that we use and what traits and enchants, we're going to start with our monster set, where we are using Silatrix. Silatrix, again, for this build is by far the best option. Now, I won't say it is the only option, but I say the best option because of the way this build plays. This build is more of a crowd control CC damage dealer. So it's more about controlling the enemies around you and making them stay either stunned or moving slow or something. So, as you can see, the 1 piece adds max stamina, 2 piece, when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to create an earthquake under the enemy that erupts after 1.5 seconds, dealing X amount of physical damage to all enemies within a 4-meter range of you, and stunning them for 3 seconds, and this can happen every 5.5 seconds. So this thing goes off a lot. So it's not a constant CC, but it's a really good crowd control CC set. The next set we're using, and this is a set I use a lot for solo play, and especially on stamina builds, but I do use Night Mother's Gaze. The reason for it, the 2, 3, and 4 piece are weapon crit and weapon damage. So the 2 and 4 piece, of course, crit, 3 piece, weapon damage, 5 piece. When you deal critical damage, you apply Major Fracture to the enemy, reducing their physical resistance by 5,280 for 6 seconds. Now, you can apply that Major Fracture with any critical damage you do. So, alright, moving on to the last set, and this is kind of an awkward set because a lot of people will be like, this is different than what you normally run, and that is Nightmare. I usually run Plague Doctors with this build, or you can even run Eben with it, but I prefer actually running Nightmare with it for the best, well-rounded setup. It adds armor to you to give you greater resistance. It gives you a 2 and 4 piece bonus, or the 3 and 4 piece bonus are health and weapon damage, and then the 5 piece bonus. When you deal melee damage, and that's all you have to do is melee damage. So anytime you use one of your weapon skills, you deal physical damage in any way in melee, you will have a 20% chance to apply Minor Maim to all enemies within 8 meters of you for 5 seconds, reducing their damage done by 15%. let's just say nothing will never have minor maim on it when you are around. That's how well this build works. Alright, so let's go over the traits and enchants on the gear, starting with our monster set and chest, or our helm, chest, and legs. We are using tri-stat enchants. This is going to give us all three attributes: magicka, stamina, and health. And this is where we get a good magicka pool, we get a good stamina pool, and we get a good health pool. When you solo play, or even in playing in small groups, having a good health pool is really important. And this build is a heavy armor build. It is not a medium armor build. You can make it medium armor, and it will have around the same health, roughly. So, tri-stats on the big pieces. On the smaller pieces, we are using max stamina enchants, and that is to maximize our stamina pool. Now, when it comes to traits, on the helm and the legs, we are using Invigorating. This gives you increased health, stamina, and magic recovery. This really helps with that mag recovery and stam recovery since you are a wood elf. Now, moving on to the the chest piece, we are using Reinforce. The chest piece. We are using Reinforce, and that's to maximize the resistances of this one piece. Now, if you were running this with, say, a different set, like a medium armor set or even another heavy armor set, you would want to go with a heavy helm or a medium helm still, and then heavy and everything except for the shoulders would be light. In this setup, because we're using a crafted set, you want to go a light belt, medium helm, and then everything else heavy. But the reinforced will give you the higher resistances with all this heavy armor. Now, moving on to the smaller pieces, again, we are using Divides to increase our max Mundus Stone use, and it works out really well with the way this build plays, because that Divines with the Thief Stone gives you the higher crit chance, which you will need. Alright, now moving on to the jewelry, the rings, starting with the rings, we have 2 Tri-Rune rings here with max health, stamina, and magicka. That's going to maximize our resource pools. And then we have 2 weapon damage enchants on the rings, and this will maximize our weapon damage. Now the necklace, we don't have the increased weapon damage. Instead, we have an infused mag recovery. And the infused is just going to enhance the mag recovery amount to a higher amount, so we get a better affinity out of it. So it just works out really good. Now moving on to the weapons, our main hand is going to be a great sword of the Nightmare Nirnhoned. If you can't make it Nirnhoned, infused is fine, because that will give you an increased amount of damage from the absorb stamina enchant you have on here, and it will give you more stamina back. Or you can even use a crusher enchant to increase your penetration value on infused. But if you are running Nirnhoned, absorb stamina works out really well. Moving on to the next item, we have our bow, which is infused with increased weapon and spell damage by X amount for 5 seconds. Now, because of the abilities we use and stuff, we actually get that weapon damage enchantment for a lot longer than 5 seconds, because it will reapply with each damage tick you apply with your bow. So that's why we have a bow on the back bar, because you can do a lot of like damage over time abilities with it. Alright, now that we've seen that, let's go ahead and move on to our skills, starting with the skills we have on our bar. Now, the skills we have on our bar only reflect how we play at that moment. So in this case, solo play. First skill we have is Wrecking Blow. Now, this does a lot of damage to an enemy. It also grants him power on your next light attack, which will increase by 40% in damage for 5 seconds. And then we have Brawler. This is a really powerful ability. It hits multiple targets, and in doing so, helps you keep that minor maim applied and that fracture. So this is a really good way to keep those things applied to multiple targets. It also does a decent amount of damage, and it gives you a damage shield that absorbs damage over 6 seconds, and the shield strength grows by 50%, or up by 50% up to a total 300%, depending on how many enemies you hit. Next ability we have is Blazing Shield. Now this just gives you a damage shield for 6 seconds based on your max health. Now each nearby enemy will increase the shield strength by 4% of the shield's strength, and then when the shield expires, it explodes, dealing 36% of the damage absorbed back to the enemies. Next, we have our Rally. This is our primary heal. It also gives us Major Brutality, which increases our weapon damage by 20%, and it gives us Minor Endurance, increasing our stamina recovery by 10% for 20 seconds. And then on top of that, you heal for so much health when Rally ends, with the final heal increased by 15% every second, up to a maximum of 300%. Now, you can activate this ability and then wait, say, 3 seconds and cast it again, and it'll heal you. And you can do this multiple times. As much healing as you need, as long as you have the resources to manage it. Alright, moving on to our next ability is Evil Hunter. Now, we primarily have this slotted for gain major savagery. The other nice thing is that while active, when you activate this ability, the damage of your stamina costing fighter skill abilities are increased by 25%. This is the only fighter skill ability you're using besides your ultimate, so you're not going to be activating this too much, unless you're using like Trap Beast or using the pull the enemies thing that pulls the enemies to you kind of stuff. If you're using those abilities, then you will not worry about it. The next ability, of course, is Flawless Dawnbreaker, and this is a really good ability. This is your primary spamming ultimate that you're going to use. It does a lot of damage up front, a lot of damage over 6 seconds, and then after activating, your weapon damage is increased by 300 for 20 seconds. And that 300 weapon damage is a lot. So it's really, really good. Alright, moving on to the back bar. On our back bar, we have our first ability, Venom Arrow. Now, this is a really good ability. It does damage up front, damage over time, and it also can interrupt, set an enemy off balance, and stun them for 3 seconds if they are casting an ability. So I use this a lot at ranged enemies, especially casters and stuff. Works out really well. Also works great in PvP. Then we have Arrow Barrage. This is just an AoE damage over time ability. It deals X amount of damage to all enemies in a 20 or 7 meter radius at a 28 meter range, up to a 28 meter range. It deals damage every second for 8 seconds after a 2-second delay. Next ability is kind of a floater. You can swap it out with another ability here, which we have is called Repentance, but I prefer this one because it does damage and it heals. So this one will remove 2 negative effects from you, and it will heal you for X amount and your allies in the area, and enemies take damage every 2 seconds for 12 seconds. Now, it also has a synergy to it, and it scales off your highest offensive stats. So in this case, max stamina and weapon damage. Next up, we have Restoring Focus. This one, you create a circle on the ground that gives you major resolve, increasing physical and spell resist by 5,280, and you recover 240 stamina every second. While standing in the ruin, your physical resistance is boosted by 50%. The nice thing about this ability is when you activate it, you actually go to 28. This is a really good amount of physical and spell resistance, and it gives you really good survivability with those damage shields that you have, both damage shields. This just gives you great survivability. Alright, so we have Evil Hunter again. Of course, like I said, you want this on both bars so you get that major savagery on both bars. And then, of course, we also have our final ability, which is Replenishing Barrier. Now, the main reason why I have this here is because it's really good in group play for like an oh crap button, but it also really helps you out in oh crap situations when you're solo playing, because it gives you a damage shield that absorbs up to 28,000 damage. And then each time a ward comes off of you, you restore 4 ultimate and 1,000 magicka. So it's another way to keep your resources sustained in magicka and an ultimate. Alright, now that you guys have seen the skills, I'm going to go just really quickly through the skills I have unlocked. So on the Adric Spear line, I do have all passives. On everything that I'm going to show you, I have all passives unlocked. So I have all class passives, all two-handed passives, all bow passives, all my armor passives, guild passives, alliance war passives, racial passives, and certain crafting passives. So first ability we have is Empowering Sweep. Now this just deals a lot of damage We have Biting Jabs. This is another great damage over time ability if you want to use it on your first slot instead of Wrecking Blow. We have Binding Javelin, we have Explosive Charge, Blazing Spear, and of course Blazing Shield. And then moving on to Dawn's Wraith, we have Solar Disturbance, Vampire's Bane, Solar Barrage, Power of the Light, Unstable Core, and Radiant Glory. And then on Restoring Light, we have Remembrance, Honor the Dead, Ritual of Rebirth, Repentance, Ritual of Retribution, and Restoring Focus. And like I said, I do have all class of passives unlocked, and that's because I use a multitude of different abilities depending on what game mode or what thing I'm doing. So Ultimate on Two-Handed, Berserker's Rage. This gives you resistances, so it's a really powerful, like, I'm going to buff my resistances thing. Like to use it in PvP. Wrecking Blow, Stampede, Brawler, Reverse Slice, and Rally. On the bow side, I have Ballista, Focused Aim, Arrow Barrage, Draining Shot, Bombard, and Venom Arrow. And then, of course, like I said, the light armor passives, I have all the top 3. Medium armor, top 2, and bottom 1. And then with heavy armor, I have all the passives because this is a heavy armor build. Moving on to Soul Magic, I have all 3 passives. I have Consuming Trap and Soul Assault unlocked. And then moving on to guild skills, Fighter's Guild, I have all the abilities unlocked, but I use Flawless Dawnbreaker, Silver Leash, Ring of Preservation, Evil Hunter, and Barbed Trap. Moving on to Mage's Guild, I have Ice Comet, Inner Light, Degeneration, Scalding Ruins, and Balance. And remember, I do have all passives unlocked for all of this stuff. Psijic Order, Precognition, Time Freeze, Crushing Weapon, Race Against Time, Min Spirit, and Introspection. And then, of course, moving on to Undaunted, I have Sanguine Altar, Shadow Silk, Inner Beast for Taunt, Spike Bone Shield if I need a different shield that's not wasting my Magicka, and I can focus on stamina, I use Spike Bone Shield, and then, of course, Mystic Orb. Moving on to Alliance stuff, we do have Aggressive Horn, Echoing Vigor, and Razor Caltrops, and then support side, we have Replenishing Barrier, Efficient Purge, and Stalwart Guard. Moving on to Wood Elf passives, we do have the Hunter's Eye passive unlocked. This is actually pretty good when you're playing in a group or even in PvP because of the roll dodge thing. And then, of course, you get Ifri's Endurance, which increases stamina recovery by 258. And then we have Resist Affliction, which gives us 2,000 stamina, poison resistance, and immunity to poison status effect. Moving on to Alchemy. Medicinal use, very important passive to get, and then in Provisioning, Gourmand, and Connoisseur. Alright, jumping over now to CP. I'm going to go through these pretty quick. Ironclad 56, 4 in this spell shield. This increases our 56 Ironclad. This reduces damage taken by direct damage attacks by 20%. 4 in this spell shield. This increases spell resist by 413. Moving on, we have 31 in the Thick Skin, reducing damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 in the Hardy, reducing physical poison, disease damage by 10%. 43 in the Elemental Defender, reducing Flame Frost, Shock, and magic damage by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 40 into Bastion, which increases the effectiveness of damage shields by 16%. 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%. And 34 into Heavy Armor Focus, increasing your physical resist while wearing 5 pieces of heavy armor by X amount. We do have 40 into Warlord, reducing break free cost by 16%. 16 into Sprinter, reducing sprint cost by 10%. 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing bash cost by 10%. And then moving on over here, 75 in Arcanus, this increases your mag recovery by 14%, and we have 43 into Tenacity. This increases your mag and stamina recovery of your fully charged heavy attacks by 10%. Now, you can put the 43 into Mooncalf if you want to. I did find that using this works out a little bit better. Moving on, we have 43 into Tumbling, reducing your dodge roll cost by 16%, and 40 into Shadow Ward, reducing block cost by 16%. Moving on to the blue tree, we have 43 into Blast, increasing your healing done by 10%. Moving on to the middle tree, we have 35 into Physical Weapon Expert. This increases your light and heavy attacks with your two-handed and bow by 20%. And then we have 40 into Mastered Arms, increasing your damage done by 16%. Moving on, we have 56 into Mighty. This increases physical poison, disease damage done by 12%. And 56 into Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing of stamina abilities by 20%. This includes your Rally. Thaumaturge, we have 40 points, which increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 16%. Alright, now that I've shown you guys that, again, like with most of my stuff, I'm going to do a quick parse on this guy here. just to show you guys how this works out. So, oops, they can ignore me. Always throw a few heavy attacks in there too. And there we go. That is it for that. And as you can see, we only do about 16k. We can get up to a good 20k if we drop our AoE Flawless Dawnbreaker. But let's go ahead and move on now to test this thing out in a dungeon so you guys can see how that works. And I am going to use the Depths of Malatar. Now, somebody will ask me, you said that you could solo Depths of Malatar on Veteran mode. This is the build that I can do it on, but I use it when I can do it when I use Plague Doctors. There is some areas of this dungeon which are really hard for the solo part. One happens to be the mouse aspect, and then the other one happens to be the one of the boss encounters can be really challenging. The first few things are not that challenging. So, all right, let's go ahead and run in here and let's get our buffs going and everything. As soon as we get to the door, I will go ahead and throw my buffs up. Or I should say, open the door. Now remember what I said about that, the one thing being a really great CC, the monster set, it really is. I mean, I've already done the mage twice. And the black thing you see showing up on them, the black smoke, that is main. So, and as you can see, she just plows through stuff. Alright, let's move on to the boss encounter. And of course, the boss encounter, a lot of people find this boss to be very challenging. In veteran mode it is, but in normal mode it's not so bad. So now I'm going to go ahead and let it kill me because I will get it down pretty quick in health. But like I said, I can solo this. It's actually quite simple on both normal and veteran, and it works out pretty well. But that is it for the Avenger, guys. I really do love this build. It's one of my all-time favorite builds I've played in this game, and I've been playing it for a very long time, for almost 3 years like this. So it is awesome. It's amazing. But that's it for the build. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Also, if you want, you can click that notification bell. That'll notify you when I post videos. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.